Team Liquid and Cloud9 have already booked their trip to Worlds. This weekend, 4 teams enter the gauntlet for a spot in the play-in stage in Berlin. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the LCS Countdown, where for 15 minutes we follow the run to Worlds and preview round 1 of the regional qualifier until the timer reaches 0, and we jump into Champions Select. Today, teams compete for North America's final spot at Worlds, which puts them in the play-in stage opposite teams like the following. Well, to be clear, some of these teams are straight qualified into the group stages of Worlds. You'll notice some big names there like RNG from the LPL, SKT, of course, from the LCK, alongside our favorites here from North America, Team Liquid and Cloud9, as well as G2 Esports, the talk of the town from the LEC.
We need some revenge against G2, right? We lost to them at MSI, at Rift Rivals, so they're looking like one of the strongest.
I'm glad to see that G2 is qualified for Worlds so that we can hand them a beatdown in a couple months.
Yes.
I hope we can. I'm also excited to see Griffin just because we've been keeping them for so long.
Finally.
They keep dominating the LCK regular season for like 2 years.
Oh man, they've got holes that are not being punished.
Get that Vedius meme out of here, dude. But I just want to see them finally, see if they choke on stage the way they choke regionally, or maybe they'll just be fine now that they've finally made it, the pressure's off.
They are a very exciting team to watch, nonetheless. So good to see them in international competition here finally. Now, FlyQuest, Clutch, Counterlogic Gaming, and TSM have all seeded into the regional qualifiers based on championship points, with TSM having the most at the end of 2 splits and FlyQuest having the least.
Yeah, and today's match might not actually be the largest match of the qualifier. We feel like Counterlogic versus Clutch Gaming has to be the strongest one. It went to 5 games. It was so close.
That's assuming the victory today, which I think is a fair assumption, based on, again, pre-series expectations. We'll dive into some of those expectations, but of course, as Crumbs mentioned here, round 1 is Clutch Gaming versus FlyQuest. Winner moves on to play Counterlogic Gaming, and then the final boss of TSM. But we have to talk about the series in Detroit for Clutch that kind of resulted them having to play perhaps 3 best-of-5s to make it to Worlds, getting, reverse swept by CLG in that 5-game series.
Yeah, I mean, it would have made the road a little bit easier because they'd be in the gauntlet either way, but that match was very indicative of, who should be the favorite in the gauntlet.
Exactly.
Now, because you knew these 2 teams were probably going to play again, but for Clutch, they had gotten a little overconfident potentially. You heard we've heard some of their pros saying, scrims were going really well. They felt like they were second best team even maybe in the tournament. They had to play Team Liquid and took them to 5 games.
Yep.
So they felt like they should go in and be able to handle CLG.
It's a huge emotional roller coaster, being so close to taking down TL, to coming so close to 3-0 CLG, and then you get reverse swept, have to run the gauntlet again, more games played than pretty much all the other teams. So this is a team that needs to really look themselves in the mirror and not get ahead of themselves, recognizing that they have a lot to grow.
If you're going to take the best-of-5 loss, though, taking it in the playoffs is the time to do it, and then retool here for the gauntlet, because this is your last shot. And so I want to talk about a couple players individually on Clutch when we talk about perhaps some of that overconfidence and retooling towards this gauntlet here. Huni and Demonte, they have been absolute stars for this team.
I mean, you can stay overconfident and then hopefully the skill catches up to you, which is what G2
Or just go to confident. Maybe just remove the over part.
Or, just bring it back a little. I think their champion pools are not deep enough to be that confident in, we're so up. I think that the team still has a lot more to grow to be able to say, okay, we can be up a few games against CLG. We can be in match point against Team Liquid, but it's still a long road ahead because of how powerful and reliant they have been on picks like Kiana and Gangplank and Rumble.
Right, and I think it's really important that they find in this week coming in that they found one more pick to slot in there, because you see 7-1 with one of those champions.
As long as one of those is in the lineup in playoffs, they're 7-1.
And they're never won without them, which is even more important. You got a great win record with them, but you also can't win without them.
Yes.
And so I think that's why finding one more key champion. I think that's what Karma was supposed to be in that series versus CLG, and it just never worked out for them using the Karma pick. But if they found something this weekend, it's this kind of critical mass, and if you can find the straw that breaks the camel's back, suddenly it's like, well, what do we ban?
Right.
If you think about old Cloud9, it was like Rumble, Xayah, Zed, Zac. They have so many of these signature picks that eventually you can't get rid of all of them. The problem is right now, Clutch, you can get rid of all their signature picks.
Now, the one other piece to call in here is, of course, that when we cite playoff records, The losses are coming against teams that ultimately finished higher than them and therefore could be dictated as stronger teams.
Right.
If you assume that FlyQuest is a weaker team, perhaps Clutch could still find victories with a more standard, style of play than finding perhaps those power picks.
Bold assumption that FlyQuest is a worse team, but I'll entertain.
And
Going out on a limb.
Yeah, you're right. The team play standard when they go up against teams that are worse than them in the regular season. They've been doing it all split long. They don't need these picks when they're up against weaker competition. So we can expect that against FlyQuest, they won't have to rely on this, and they might go back to their more traditional style.
The point becomes more valid, though, when you look at the future matchups.
It's a long weekend for them.
Right, exactly. Having to go up against CLG next and then TSM if they are to win here today. Now, ahead of today's series, Think Card weighed in on how the reverse sweep hit the squad.
Yeah, so it's always brutal to lose in a reverse sweep fashion. We were feeling really good about ourselves, but it's a reality check. It makes us realize that we can't let our egos get too high. We can't be cocky. We have to take it one game at a time. And if we lose a game in a best of 5, that's okay. We just got to refocus and go into the next game the same way we go into the first game. Yeah, so we haven't seen FlyQuest in forever. I would say Santorin's kind of their shining star. He kind of carries them through early game. He has first blood a lot of those games. So Santorin's kind of the X factor. And besides that, we know what to expect. We know that if we play our game, we're going to come out ahead. So we focus on ourselves and just respect numbers.
I think a pretty natural, response to having taken losses, in the previous weeks, but then returning to this still with some amount of confidence, as we said, that's important to hold on to. Just take it game by game. Now, it's been a bit since we've heard from the number 4 seed heading into the Gauntlet, so let's go ahead and get a recap of their 2019 in FlyQuest, oversimplified.
It's 2019 spring, and the North American scene just hit critical levels of roster madness, leaving former Liquid mid laner Pobelter to join FlyQuest alongside Academy talent Viper in the top lane. And somewhere along the way, FlyQuest started winning. It was awesome. Turns out Pobelter can get angry, putting some carry pants on to complement those pipes.
Pobelter making sure Onda goes down next.
Also, solo queue rules stay true. You probably shouldn't give a Riven main their Riven.
Oh! Once again, Viper shuts down 1,000 gold bounty. Oh my goodness, Viper fights him off 2v1.
And Santorin was the only player not in TSM, Cloud9, or Team Liquid to burst into the All-Pro voting for Spring. All this alongside their veteran bot lane shot them to a 4th place finish, inspiring hope amongst fans that in the summer split, this was the roster to challenge the Big 3.
1, 2, 3, FlyQuest!
And then summer happened. 9 weeks have come and gone, and FlyQuest have been unable to recapture the magic. Now, at the 11th hour, the magic has to come online for a spot at Worlds. Dun, dun, dun.
Kind of glossed over the summer season there, Riv. It was like 10 seconds at the end. Then summer season happened.
Tells you a bit about how summer season went for FlyQuest. But before we suppose what kind of form FlyQuest is in, I want to hear from Wild Turtle on their time off and what they did.
We pretty much have been working on our team play and mostly our rotations. I think we didn't have any sense of macro in our summer split, and it was very clear that we did not know how to win any games. So we kind of took a step back and just tried to understand how the map should be played and how we should be playing and how we can create more opportunities so we don't look like FlyQuest in summer split. And I think that's been going pretty positively right now. And it's just going to take the extra. Well, we haven't played on stage for a month, so it's going to be very hard to say how we'll do on stage. But I think our team is very confident that we can perform.
So the hope is that FlyQuest took this time off, grinded with the sole focus of this tournament, and have made vast improvements. But I want to get your thoughts. What do you actually hope to see out of FlyQuest now that they have, emerged from this hyperbolic time chamber of a month's worth of postseason?
I mean, listen, this is
either the Dragon Ball Z one where time moves slower, or did they only have a month?
They had 1 month, Mark.
An hyperbolic. It's either hyperbolic time chamber or a circus tent just filled with fiesta in there. We will never know until game 1 where we see what they've actually done.
Okay, but if you were to diagnose what they would have done in that month, what would you want to see them emerging out of this month with?
I mean, they talked a lot about improving team play, which I think is important. Just getting more active as a unit, not just like, hey, one guy go make a play and be better at it. Like, get your mid laner and jungler roaming bot or top together to make 3- and 4-man plays around the map. I think a lot of that stuff will help, as well as figuring out what to do in draft.
I want to see Santorin just step up because he was so close to being an MVP in spring. He was doing so well, and then suddenly something happened that he just went back to, I mean, not even going back. It was so uncharacteristic that he was just not ganking for anybody, not really doing a lot on the map, and I would have really liked to see him carry the momentum in spring and impact positively lanes like Viper, a guy that won Rookie of the Split for his Riven.
What's interesting, though, is when you just look at the stats on a surface level, it doesn't actually look like he's playing any worse. And it's not even less proactive either. It's, similar kills and assists at 15 minutes, 2 to 1.8. The jungle proximities were actually higher in summer than spring, which makes you think, like, okay, he's still being really active. But it wasn't translating, seemingly, to the advantages that they were finding earlier. But I think that's the first obvious thing to look at, but you have to look beyond that and look at some of the other people on the team, I think.
Right. I mean, quite obviously, even though he's spending a similar amount of time around his lanes, it is arguably just less effective in terms of what it is gaining. As well, the focus of his jungle proximity has shifted, and so that is another important thing to recognize, is that the lanes that he's going to is changing.
Speaking of shifting, you notice that Pobeltra's kills and deaths from spring and summer have flipped. So he has not been having the greatest split, and I think a big part of it is him not finding a very comfortable champion pool. But while the stats are similar, it's the fact that his synergy with Santorin has been missing that makes both look worse.
That's key. 4% increase in jungle proximity, netting a very small CS advantage or uptick, but overall less gold for Pobelt.
And that's why, you have to kind of use your eyes. You can't just look at stats as a whole. Like, why is he spending more time around mid lane? Is it because they're making great dives into the turret? No, it's actually because they're getting slammed mid lane and he's stabilizing with his jungle proximity versus creating leads.
Right.
And that's one of the problems I think that this team has seen, was a lot of the times they had really stable early games, then played great as a late game team.
The early games are falling apart.
The early games are falling apart, and you heard them talking about, we need to improve our teamwork.
All right, there you have it. Ahead of his first best of 5 of summer, though, Invert weighed in on FlyQuest strategy in the regional qualifiers.
Clutch is the toughest by far. I think Clutch is the toughest. During the Gauntlet, teams playing in the Gauntlet had to play each other, and we kind of divided our practice such that we would show certain things to certain teams and certain things to other teams. The teams in playoffs didn't have that benefit. They kind of had to put everything on the table for their playoff run, and so we have the information advantage, and we're going to try and exploit that.
Well, ahead of the match, and not too long, let's go ahead and nab some win conditions here. We got 2 minutes left to go. So first up, FlyQuest, what's it going to be?
Well, 2 minutes, I got to take this whole time.
All right, go for it.
All right.
I don't think very many people understood that, but it was very funny for us.
Destroy the Nexus. Santorin's just got to be good. Santorin's got to step up. Lyra's been doing so much for Clutch Gaming that it's going to have to be for him to have a good game. His last game against, it was Echo Fox, he ran Karthus. It seemed to fit the play style. If you're not going to gank, you might as well gank with your R from the jungle. So if he shows up and they have a good draft, I think they got this.
So I think I actually just want to give the remaining minute to
Are you
Trump.
sure?
Yeah, to know Mark hit me with Clutch Gaming's win condition.
All right, this is kind of a weird win condition, but it's don't show your hand. I think this
is not a win condition.
Well, so you have a long weekend. You have 3 best of 5s coming up.
Oh, gotcha.
This is more of a weekend approach.
I like it.
We've talked about how they can win against what they view as lesser opponents with things like Corki and Azir and some of this other stuff. I hope they spend all week picking up a new cool champion. Don't show it here unless for somehow FlyQuest forces you to game 5 and you have to try and innovate. Otherwise, play as standard and obvious as you can, and hopefully that's enough to take them down. And you can go into tomorrow with new picks.
I like that approach, though, the weekend approach here for Clutch.
That's really looking past FlyQuest.
Well, so that could be
it's a holistic view.
Oh, so now give me your thoughts on who actually takes the series. I mean, we've definitely been pitching it as there being a clear favorite here, but I want to hear it from you guys. Who takes it, series score?
Okay, FlyQuest has only been scrimming TSM, right? You couldn't have been scrimming anybody else. I think underneath there, that thing is a circus, not a hyperbolic time chamber. Clutch Gaming 3-0.
Clutch Gaming 3-0 prediction there, Mark. Do you align?
I'm in the same camp.
3-0.
You even heard Invert talking about it in the interview. He says he feels like Clutch, if they beat Clutch, they feel great. He feels like they're the toughest competition. So that's scary that FlyQuest doesn't have any sort of ramp-up time to take down a lesser opponent to try and scale into him.
I think that's very interesting. Okay, so then let's extrapolate just a quick moment with Clutch perhaps 3-0ing here to move on to CLG. Do you believe that a week's time is enough to cover some of those things we had talked about, hoping that they would figure out as a result of losing that third-place match just a week ago?
For Clutch, no, because they have to face 3 opponents if they actually want to run the whole thing. But for everybody else, you just have to come up with 3 strategies to win 3 games. That's it, right? TSM, win 3 games. Everybody else just has to do less, and we don't expect FlyQuest to run the whole thing.
Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like it's much easier to fix a draft problem potentially than an in-game problem. I still like Clutch's in-game play quite a bit. I think Lyra's been playing a lot better.
What about Karma?
I don't like Karma, but that you can fix. Don't pick it.
Yeah, just don't pick it. Right?
You've done it. Whereas, like, if a team is struggling to make plays or a team is struggling to work as a unit, like FlyQuest and TSM and some of these other teams in the Gauntlet, I'm much more concerned about fixing problems like that in a shorter time frame, even a month-long time frame, than a team who's like, hey, we work really well together, we get along great, our coaching staff works well with us. We just need to get a little more depth in our champion pool.
All right, so I'm being told we have a small audio issue on stage, which gives us a few more minutes. Perfect. I know. I'm like, well, let's just put you back on your soapbox and you can take off. No, I want to now look back over at FlyQuest because while we talked about some of the team aspects of play needing to be kind of shored up, and Santorin being a pivotal component of that. Where should he be going in the early game? Where would we like to see him go?
It's too hard to say because we don't know what the form in FlyQuest is, right? If Viper is popping off, you could say, obviously, you got to go top. If Pobelter is going back to his old form, you go mid. But I think what Santorin and the rest of the squad can really hone in on is the fact that no one has seen them play. No one knows their priorities in draft. No one knows if they've picked up a champion pool because you haven't scrimmed against that. And if they can just zero in on that and come out of the gate swinging with one strong game 1 win that way, you force Clutch Gaming to have to ban it in the following games, and then you have a draft advantage in the following matches.
Yeah, because I think we were talking about what form should FlyQuest be in. In spring, they were very much like a team-fighting team, and they didn't focus on strong lanes, and they would try to get to a point where they would press the Oran Horn for JJ at support position and start these fights. I think they need to find that style again, a strong team fight focus, and it's a decent metaphor with things like the Corki Azir, which have been historically some of Pobelter's best picks. I think they can find a form like that. The question is, how can you make that work with Santorin?
Terrible.
What?
Coughing into his hand. You cough into your elbows, people. Think of the germs.
Oh, my goodness.
I was like, what's terrible?
What did you just witness on stage that is causing you so much
we're anxiety here?
So then I also want to talk about how these two teams actually match up, to a degree, lane by lane, because while we have talked about what each of these teams should do individually or, on their own, where they match up is also, I think, very important. We saw from the CLG series that when Power of Evil was looking for answers to DeMonte's pool in things like the Diana, they did not find success matching, let's say, the Assassin with the Assassin, and that it was more about Power of Evil living in his comfort zone of mid lane champions. Pobelter, to me, aligns a little bit more with a PoE style of play. And so should they be ripping straight from the CLG playbook and saying, hey, play things more along the lines of the Orianna, don't try and match a Kiana or an Akali with a Diana or a Kiana herself.
I see what you're saying, and I think you can take it a step further and say, don't copy exactly the CLG playbook, but copy the fact that they stuck to what worked for them.
Right.
The problem is, nothing's worked for FlyQuest.
Yeah. So I say copy the CLG. I'm going to dash here. Copy the CLG playbook. Okay. Maybe not the Orianna specifically, because that does feel like a PoE staple, but, the Corki, the Azirs, if you want to play the Orianna, you can go for it. Maybe the Karma mid works better for a team like FlyQuest, who can have more top lane carry potential. Yeah. It's a good meta for Viper, for sure, where there's a lot of carry potential in the top lane. Even the standard power picks up there, like an Aatrox, is a scrappier and more solo carry-focused champion. So that's why I think it should be a good meta for them. They have a lot of strong late-game carries for Turtle, who might have been the best performer on the team this split. So if you want to get him the Zayas and Sivers, you can. Or if you want to go more early game focus with Caitlyn's and stuff, they have a lot of tools to work with.
I mean, there's been a lot of discussion around the world when it comes to the competitive scene at the moment that it is very reliant on strong bot lanes, or that a lot of regions feel like bot lanes are dictating, the ultimate results of series and matchups between teams. And so, again, if we consider that, hey, FlyQuest has been Turtle has been the top performing member of FlyQuest, maybe that is their answer.
I've been saying that, right? Oh, follow Turtle. He's the only player in this squad that historically is a very aggressive player that always wants to make plays, always over-aggressive. But if you just follow him every step of the way, his over-aggression now looks like a very well-oiled team following one purpose.
And on the topic of ADCs and marksmen, ahead of his run for a spot at Worlds, Cody-san described the ramp-up of his squad through summer.
Or for our team, right? I feel like we were the least popular team for a pretty long time. Even before I joined and after I joined, we were still like no one really considered us as like a good team. No one thought we would even make playoffs. And we did that, and no one thought like we would beat TSM, and we did that. And I think people are starting to get on the trend that like we're sort of like competitive team. And I think now, because of our journey where we started at like 9th place in LCS, we definitely don't take the fans for granted, and there's so much fans that want you to do well, so you have to do well, not only for the sake of yourself and your teammates, but also for the fans that are cheering you on.
Here's a problem I have with Clutch, is every time I try and be their fan, they start losing. In 2018, when they were the line team, I doubted them forever. Finally, I bought in, and they started losing. I picked them to beat CLG.
Feels like a Mark-specific issue here.
As soon as I pick them to beat CLG, they get reverse swept.
Doesn't feel like a general Clutch fandom issue, more like a Mark Z
He's
issue.
saying, why don't people trust believe in them? I don't believe in them because I'm not allowed to.
That's true. Well, I mean, and hey, there's actually a lot of validity to that statement, right? Which is that this is actually a squad that has not proven themselves at this level yet, right? They are trying to do something that their org and this set of players together has not yet achieved. Maybe individually and on previous rosters they have. And so, they're trying to make a statement in that regard. But I also want to acknowledge that momentum, and that even though they did lose a very tough 5-game series against CLG, the fact that they did go to 5 against TL, the fact that they did go to 5 against CLG, based on where this team was just 8 months ago, that's wildly impressive.
Oh, absolutely. And they should always look back with pride at how far they've come.
Eventually, you got to put the W's on the board, though, and start beating some of these other playoff teams.
Well, perhaps they can start here against FlyQuest, needing to put 3 W's together to move on and get that rematch against CLG. With that, we're going to throw it out to the casters for the call of Game 1.
Thank you very much, Dash. I am Rivington III here with Isaac Azale, Cummings Bentley, and we are about to bring you what could be an amazing weekend, what will be an amazing weekend as we find out who the third and final team will be over the next 3 days to go to Worlds.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Both these teams will have a long run if they were to be the ones to make it. Would have to be those 3 consecutive BO5 wins here. FlyQuest obviously coming off of a much more rough summer split, for sure. Really needs to be able to kind of step up and get back to that spring form. That is really what got them this berth in the Gauntlet.
And that's what we've kind of heard from the